Well, good evening and welcome to tonight's webinar presented by Agri-Best Feeds. My name is Justin Mills and I will be your host and moderator for tonight's webinar. And we are glad that you are here with us as we get into tonight's presentation on seed minerals for soil health. You know, we had a presentation on this early part of last summer, and a lot of interesting elements to this whole concept, and so you're going to be really pleased with tonight's webinar. I want to remind you that following tonight's presentation, we will have a question and answer time following this that you can allow to talk one-on-one with our presenter as well as some of our panelists that are joining us as well. The easy way for you to ask questions, of course, is next to your name. You'll see your attendee list there, and next to your name is an opportunity. You can click in there. We'll know you have a question, and we can call that on you at that point. Also, you can also ask your questions through typing them out as well. But again, we want to take we will give you plenty of opportunity to ask questions. Well, I want to present to you our first presenter here tonight, and actually he's got some other introductions that he will make as well. But joining us tonight from Redmond Minerals is Aaron. I knew I was going to get your last name wrong, Aaron, but here it is. Aaron Ellison, who is the Ag Team Leader for Redmond Minerals. And Aaron, we are glad that you are here with us. I know you are as excited about tonight's presentation as we are to hear some of the exciting things happening with Redmond Minerals and some of the elements with sea salt for soil health as our presentation is. And so with that, at this point, Aaron, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Justin. Pleasure to be with you again, everyone, and taking the time to visit with us tonight. I don't know how many of you have listened to this kind of a thing before, but you'll have to bear with me if you've heard it a time or two, and otherwise hopefully you can pick something up. I don't want to spend very long. I think most of you probably heard a little bit about this. Really want to take time to hear David's story. I'll introduce him in just a minute. But to begin with, I guess, to kind of set the stage for him, Redmond Minerals, if any of you are a little bit new to this, the first thing we want to talk about is we're going to start with the sea, and why in the world do we start with the sea? But we will, and what the significance of that is and what it means to us. Make sure my advancer works tonight. There we go. First of all, the reason we start talking about the sea is when it comes to especially the Redmond salt deposit, every salt deposit has been or is from sea at some period of time. Redmond's deposit just happens to be a very ancient one, been sealed away in the earth for all these centuries of time. And the reason we talk about the sea is because, you know, such a vast majority of life lives in the sea. The vast majority of the earth is covered by the sea. And what is so unique about that? First of all, how does it become mineralized? We're going to get into the mineral aspect of this for a minute. And there are several ways that this happens. It's estimated that there's over 20,000 underwater volcanoes in the oceans of the world, and you know, we know of the many that are on the land, and those things are spewing minerals, deep earth rich minerals, into that ocean water. And then the other way is the erosion. We all know that, you know, when the air blows and out there trying to disc and harrow this spring, and when the wind blows, you know, stop because my topsoil is going away in the wind. You know, we all know about the erosion. It all winds up in the river. It all winds up in the ocean. And those are just some of the ways that the sea becomes mineralized. I guess if you really got technical about it, it's, you know, you got decomposing plant and animal life in there too, and you know, all kinds of things. But what is so neat about it is that the ocean has a very unique capability to hold a perfect balance and proportion of minerals. Dr. Maynard Murray, you've probably heard me refer to him before, in his book, Sea Energy Agriculture, he said that unlike the colloid state of topsoil on the land, this liquid crystallize, this crystalloid in the sea maintains this consistent balance. And so anything that isn't in this perfect balance in the sea will precipitate out, fall to the floor, and if any plants that need to live in that area will, or if any sea life needs to go down and pick any of that up, they can. But the balance and proportion in the sea is always perfect. And it's also been found that in the sea, I'll just throw out a question. If some of you may not know, how many minerals are in the sea? How many minerals do you suppose are in this balance and proportion that these guys talk about? When I went to school, we studied mostly 8 or 10 or 12, a few of the macros and micros, and we're learning more about a lot of them all the time. But in the sea, there are 90 or 92 technically, I think, is what's been found, minerals off the periodic table of elements that I remember from high school. So that's the place, that's the one place on Earth where you have the mineral concentration and you have the balance and proportion that is necessary to support life. One of the things that, by the way, Dr. Murray, if any of you haven't read his book, he was a medical doctor, became fascinated with this sea and the minerals in it and the life there. He autopsied literally thousands of sea creatures and found that he couldn't find heart diseases and hard arteries and cancers and things like that in sea life. And he attributes that to that perfectly balanced mineralized system there. Tissues of old sea lions, or whales being very, very similar to that of the young. Just things like that, to keep it pretty simple. What he also says in that book is in the sea, by the very nature of the liquid crystalloid state, there's no occurrence of blocking or the need to substitute elements. In other words, trying to substitute a sodium for potassium or something like that. All of the elements on the atomic table are in solution, again, in that balance and proportion that he's talking about. One of the things that I want to, that crystalloid state, too, that's an important term right there. The way I like to refer to that, the reason that's so significant is because when minerals are in that form, they are highly, highly available. They're utilized very easily. In fact, yeah, here you go. That liquid crystalloid state, that makes these substances, when they dissolve and diffuse through animal and vegetable membranes, very readily. They do what they're supposed to do, and they maneuver very easily. I call it nature's chelation. We all know that rock minerals are they're available at a certain rate depending on the form, and then we've chelated minerals to get more of a utilization out of them. But the sea is the trump card of all of it. That liquid crystalloid state, these minerals are highly, highly available. And Dr. Murray, and there's a picture of that book, he attributed that to that perfect balance in the sea. So that's why we talk about the sea. So what happens when, in this case in the middle of Utah, where these minerals come from, what happens when this crystallizes? Well, they say this is a Jurassic time period deposit. And when I first got here, I had to look up, I couldn't remember exactly how many years that was, but somewhere between 150 and 200 million years ago is what the geologists say that means. But anyway, whatever it means, a long, long time ago, this deposit was left here. And what happens when the sea recedes is you get these concentrations that are left over of these minerals. This is kind of a neat structure here. About a mile down in this section of Utah, there's a layer of this mineralized salt, and right here where we are, the movements of the earth pushed up a big mountain of that. The veins in this mine run vertically instead of horizontally, and interestingly, it provides quite a self-supporting structure. This picture you're looking at is one of our drill rigs. We drill and blast these holes that are about 40 or 50 feet high and 60 feet wide, and then tunnel. We don't take everything except in that tunnel, and we have a series of tunnels in there, and we're down about 300 feet at the deepest point of this to date. But that's just a picture of the drilling rig, and so these things support themselves. We don't have to reinforce the ceilings. We just round them off. But it's very fascinating that what you get when you pop open a tote or a bag, or you're looking at a salt block of Redmond salt, that you're looking at that just as it comes out. To us, it's just pure gold. There's no sorting, screening, but this is what happens when that sea receded all those years ago, left that perfect balance and all the minerals intact. What makes, one of the things about Redmond that makes it so unique that we should point out is that even though I said earlier, every salt, whether it's collected off of a modern sea and evaporated, or it's a deposit like ours, or Louisiana, or New Mexico, or Kansas Gray, or any of those, what makes this so unique is the mineral content. For some reason, those other deposits don't have the mineral concentrations. And it's interesting, even when you compare it to some of the modern seas, that the concentrations of this are a little bit stouter, and David may want to touch on that later, what he's found in that regard, because he's played with a lot of different sea-sourced minerals in what he's done. So anyway, part of that might be that the product we call Redmond Conditioner, which is essentially some of that volcanic ash we talked about earlier, there's a layer of that over this deposit, and the geologists believe that that helped to protect the mineral content concentrations from leaching out. That clay's a nice sealer up there, and then we've hence found out that there's lots of wonderful uses for that stuff, and we've utilized it for years and years in the livestock industry and in the human health industry, just from Redmond here. So anyway, that's what happens when one of these seabeds crystallizes. There you go. You got your next slide there. This is just a picture for you of one of the entrances to the mine. You can see it's not very far from the top. There's not a lot of overburden there, and it's just intriguing to see and to go down there and visit. The picture on the left is some of that volcanic ash, or a Redmond Conditioner, which is a montmorillonite clay. I like that picture because you can see the different colors of the different mineral compositions in that. When we excavate that and bring it all in together, you get the very, very mineral-rich product that it is. So those are the two things that come out of this little deposit of ours on our property here in Redmond, Utah. I want to make sure that one thing I wanted to point out, I didn't include the slide on this, but one of the things that has been found out is that when you, in fact, the Salt Institute published this paper from a doctor, and I forget his name, from the University of Illinois, that when you look at the composition, the mineral composition of human blood, you will find that it's very, very similar, almost identical to that of this balanced seawater that we've talked about, including the large amounts of sodium chloride. In fact, the Salt Institute published that when you cook down all of the minerals, about 93% is sodium in yours and my blood. What is so interesting is that's about the average percent of sodium or of salt in our deposit here. The other 7% are all of the traces, all of those, we say 60+ traces. There could be more. The labs we use only test down to certain levels, and they only test for so many minerals, and I probably could take the money and go spend to find a lab that would do it. I haven't. Maybe I should. But anyway, just to not mislead anybody, we just say over 60. But 7% of your blood, my blood, and this deposit is all of those other minerals. So it's very, very interesting. I mean, it gets way out there, but Dr. Murray and others have even done testing with sometimes replacing blood with this perfectly balanced sea solution and things like that. So it's very interesting the way nature has put that together. But I thought you'd find that interesting. Let's see, just before we get into the soil part really quick, we of course have had a lot more experience on the animal side of things. The way this evidences itself on the animal side is that when you present this with any other salt, any other mineral, this is what they prefer. This is what animals will seek. It doesn't matter if it's a deer, if it's a cow or a goat. This is what they like. It's what they go after. I didn't include those pictures tonight because we're going to talk about the soil. But if that's what the animals like and that's what they prefer, and we've done the tests to do it, and you can do it at home, and many of you probably already have, you'll find the same thing. That's not to say that an animal won't utilize some other mineral that you would offer. I still do that sometimes here if I think there's a need. But the majority of the time, animals that are fed properly, that have access to clean water and the things they need, they will seek this over anything else. Now, Dr. Murray is one of the guys that started taking this to the soil back when, I don't know how many people might predate that, but you know, he was back in the 50s, early 50s. But finding out that essentially the soil and the rumen of a cow really are so very similar. Dr. Murray found out that when he'd take these sea minerals and he'd go to the land with them, amazing things would happen, just like we found in livestock. He's used sea minerals hydroponically in the soil, different application rates, different crops, and always he found, and we're continuing to find, great benefits from doing this. One of the trials we've been running, this year we're going to go a few layers deeper, but we've been doing a grazing dairy up there in Idaho, and we have found that using a refractometer to measure basically the concentrations of sugars in the plant, what is more commonly called a Brix meter or Brix reading, we started with that last year and found that in this guy's soil, over the control area and over even two of the neighbors' control fields that are a couple miles apart, we would have Brix readings of about 7 on the alfalfa hay in his hay mixture of grasses and alfalfa. When we applied 75 pounds of Redmond salt, his Brix went from a 7 to a 9. And when we applied 150 pounds an acre on this guy's place, the Brix jumped up to a 12. This guy is so ecstatic that he's going to do that again this year, and in fact he even took a little further and he's using 300 pounds on some areas to see what happens there. One of the things that a few people have done that we know is to increase these concentrations of the minerals for another reason that Dr. Murray studied in his day, and that is that he found a place where he could, a level in the places that he tested where he could apply so many pounds per acre of these sea minerals and actually breed disease out of these plants. They would thrive. He would inject corn blithe, for instance. He raised a bunch of corn, injected corn blithe. He had applied 100, 200, 500, 1,000, 1,500, clear up to a ton an acre, and he found that at about 1,500 pounds an acre of sea solids, and this was collected off of a modern sea and evaporated, he found that at 1,500 pounds, corn blithe could not touch the corn. And then every application rate lower than that, he could start to see it clear down to the control group, which was just obliterated by it. So it's that kind of a concept, that kind of a thing that has spurred this, and all over the country, especially in our organic customer bases and back in the Midwest and East, more and more and more, we are seeing this product going out on the pastures and hay fields especially. We have more garden growers and greenhouse guys and bigger farmers that are looking at it and asking questions. We're still learning, but if this is anything like in a cow's belly, we know what happens, and it's good, and things thrive on that. So with that bit of introduction, if I missed a few points, we'll let David kind of cover for me. But by the way, this picture here is a friend of ours, David's and mine, and this is one of those guys that threw down several 100 pounds an acre on some turnips. The left picture is his control group, and the other picture was his treatment group. And when I was first talking to him about this a couple of years back, he said, yeah, the control group was about 3 inches, my treatment group was about 5 inches, but that's not really what I was looking for. And I'm like, wait a minute, But he says, no, he was looking for some breeding this disease resistance is what he was experimenting with. But even just in that application rate, he said, this is the difference that I found in my turnips in the field. So I'm going to turn the time over to David now to tell you his experience, tell you what he's done. He's worked on his own doctorate degree, if we can say that. He has spent he spent 10 years. He's got 2 years in his what do you call it? Anyway, it's not his internship, but he's been playing with this for a long time. David lives in Burns, Oregon area. He's a grass beef finisher, so some of you might have a lot of interest in that part of what he's doing. He has cranked out some pretty high quality carcasses, and I'll let him tell you about his pastures, what he's done, the quality that he has seen in his grasses, and why he's able to do what he does. And with that introduction, David, I'll turn the time over to you to tell your story.
Okay, thanks, Aaron. And you covered things well. You reminded me of a couple things that I hadn't heard in a number of years. So I'm gonna I'll just step back and start a little bit at the beginning. I got to bend Aaron's ear a year and a half ago for about 4 days, so I'm going to boil 4 days worth of talking down into a couple hours here, and then you can, if I've got anybody left, we'll see if you have a question. 11 years ago, and I was trying to think about this morning. I was thinking that it was 11 or 12 years ago. I invited the local fertilizer guy onto my place, and he applied what he applied to everybody's place, and that was 200 pounds of ammonium nitrate. And he drove off with a check in his hand that had my autograph on it. And the next thing I know is that he had killed my place, and that was the start of how I got to where I'm at. I then proceeded to go to see a doctor, and he gave me the same bill of health that my place was given after the fertilizer guy left, and the doctor said, if you don't change something, you're going to clutch your chest and fall over dead. So here I was. I was sick, my land was sick, and I had no idea that the two were even remotely connected. What happened from that point is that I took their medicine for 3 months because the doctor always gives you a medicine, and found out that I couldn't take it. And I was looking at my ground at the very same time going, I can't go back to the fertilizer guy, and everything that I knew about commodity ag had to change. And it took me, I was on the hunt for probably a year and a half, and then when I started finding information that got me going down the path that I thought I needed to be on, it took me about 6 months to change my paradigm. And that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about a paradigm shift. And I'm looking at my numbers here of how many people are listening. I got 15 people on. And I knew that Scott had told me that there were going to be a lot of distributors on here. And I'm sure that there's some people out there that are doing just commodity ag. If you're sitting here listening to this, there's also something that's sort of resonating with you, that you think that there's maybe a little bit different way of doing things. And I started on this thing as a health sort of a path. When I went to see a doctor, it turned me into a vegetarian, and I don't do vegetarian very well. And it took me about 3 years to figure out how I could eat meat again. And in that process, I had to figure out, living at 4,100 feet here in the northern Great Basin, of how to grow grass, and grass that would be healthy. And and it took me about 3 years to figure that out. In the figuring it out, I was looking at not only my own health, but I was looking at animal health, that there was a huge connection between grass and soil, and getting that animal to not only be healthy, but also to be able to put fat on it through the grass. I knew that my body didn't metabolize omega-6 saturated fat, which is grain-fed, and that's typical of commodity beef. So I was trying to figure out how to make my animals healthy, utilizing a forage that was on my place, that because nobody else was producing forage that would do what I wanted to do, and then I'm sort of stealing Scott's points with his company, is that I didn't want to spend a lot of money doing it. I didn't want to go to the soil people and give them hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars to test my soil and tell me, because quite frankly, the place that I was living on, the place that I still live on, is primarily alkali ground. The biggest part of my property, which I call the backfield, has alkali that's 4 feet thick. I know because I dug through it to get down to the point where I could actually see some dirt. And then my front field was, at best, slightly better than my backfield. So I was dealing with a lot of things, and I had to come up with something that would not only allow me to eat meat again, but I also had to come up with something that would go and give me animals that were healthy, and that I didn't need to have vaccinations, and I didn't need to have a vet out here, and I didn't need to have a jar of LA200 sitting in my refrigerator. So that's sort of how the whole thing got started. I started looking at this this way of farming. I call it enhanced farming. That's it's so far beyond organic that that I don't fit into the organic realm. It's way beyond sustainable, because when I tell you the figures that you can literally change your ground and the money that you can do it with, it'll boggle your mind. And I'm just trying to think of anything else that will give you sort of a little bit of an upfront idea of what I'm doing. If you were to have somebody walk up to you and that looked at you and you didn't think that he belonged to a carnival, and he wasn't going to sell you a bill of goods, and he told you that you would use a third to a half of the water that you use now to grow your forage. If he was to tell you that your plants would be drought resistant, if they'd be frost resistant, and that you wouldn't have to apply a pesticide because the insects will not even cross your place, and if you do, you laugh at them and you say you better get out of here before you die. And if this person was to walk up to you and tell you that your herbicide bill would drop down to virtually nothing, you'd probably want to listen at least for a little bit until you found out he was a crackpot, or if it was something that you could do. And what I have learned with using sea minerals, and I'm there's a twofold aspect to this. There's the sea minerals, and I don't call it sea salt. You mention salt to somebody, and you'll lose them every time. If you say, yeah, I'm dumping sea salt on my ground, I never say it anymore. I call it sea minerals. Okay, and you have to have something in your soil, and I'll explain it here in just a second, called compost tea. It's the simplest way of getting these two things. What I've learned is you have to have a level of life in your soil. I don't know if I've got any dryland farmers here that you either take some flood water or just rain or your snow melt. You have a very limited time of growth on your place with the microbial life, and you understand dryland farming better than probably even I do, and I live in a very arid climate. My annual rainfall here is about 9 inches a year, and then so you have to irrigate if you want anything beyond that one crop. How to tell if you've got life in your soil, and I'm talking earthworms, the microbes, the bacteria, the fungus, is that you take a very highly technical piece of equipment and walk into your field with it. You all probably have it in the back of your pickup. It's called a shovel. You walk out into your field when you've got moisture in there that you would think that earthworms would be there, and you turn it over. Take a shovelful and turn it over. Look to see if you've got life there. If you haven't put ammonium nitrate on your soil, if you haven't used a pesticide or an herbicide on your soil, you should have evidence of life. You should either see earthworm castings, earthworm eggs, even earthworms. And if you've got life in your soil, you have the ability to use these sea minerals effectively, because the sea minerals put on dry, go down, the microbial activity packs that over to the plant. You can study this from Elaine Ingham with the soil food web. There's lots of books out there now on the soil food web. Lots of books out there on microbial life in your soil. And you start working on that. On my place, I protect the worms on my place as much as I protect my children. And someone could say, David, you're a nut. And I go, yes, thank you very much. I'll agree with that. But what you want to do is if you've got life in your soil, and when you've got moisture in your soil, and it's good and warm, and when it's going out there and observing the soil. The next thing that I had to learn, because I was going, okay, if you get life in the soil, what happens if your soil is mined out? And we have mined our soil out. Just like strip mining, every time you take a crop off of your ground, you have removed nutrients, a lot of nutrients, you're mining your soil. Okay, just plain and simple. I think you understand that. If there's nothing there to have the microbes take to the plant, then your plant quality is going to be down, and on top of that, the plant quality is down. It's like Aaron was just saying, the resistance to insects and pests is just incredible. Once you determine how much life you've got in your soil, you determine what kind of soil you have. The kinds of pounds that Maynard Murray talks about in Sea Energy Agriculture, back in Illinois, where that soil drains so well, people that have sandy soil. I have an extremely heavy soil here, lots and lots of clay. And you know, when Aaron tells me that that he's got someone that's putting on 150 pounds to the acre, I cringe, because if I were to put on 150 pounds to the acre here, I would have Carthage. All right. So you know, if you've got a little bit of life, your soil is heavy, you put on a little bit of sea minerals. And I'm talking, my first applications of sea minerals were probably 2 and 3 pounds to the acre. And you have to think micro. You're not thinking macro. If you've got a very sandy, loamy soil where it drains very quickly, your sea minerals are going to wash past the root zone. You're going to have to do some experiment on what you can put on. But what's interesting is the more life you have in your soil, the more sea minerals you can put on. And they handle it. They pack it to the plant. They're not overwhelmed. It's a real balancing act. I call it a symbiotic dance. You know, without getting you know, too mystical on you, but it is. It's a dance, and as you build the life in your soil, the more you can put on. I put on 2 years ago about 40 pounds to the acre, and I'm still living with the benefits of that because my soil doesn't drain and doesn't wash past the root zone real fast. But once you get your life in your soil and you're promoting the life in your soil, the more you can apply the sea minerals, which promotes more life in the soil. It's just one. It's just one thing. It just builds on itself, is what I'm trying to say. But what's interesting is as I've built my soil up, and as others that I've worked with built their soil up, they use less water. Well, in the using less water, you're getting the same biomass, you're still getting the same growth that you're getting, but your quality is up. And the result that fellow got there in Idaho that Aaron was telling you about is exactly the result. You'll see it jump. You know, just the very first application, after you put the water on, you'll see a bump, and that's usually I usually somewhere between a 5 and 6 point jump on a refractometer using bricks, and bricks. And I'll make a comment here because there is so much to cover. I talk with people for hours about this. When you bring up bricks, you're bringing up everything. It's not just sugars. It's not just the carbohydrate in the plant. The refractometer, just to give you a quick history lesson, it was designed and for the wine industry in the 1850s because you know, you had tasters of grapes, and but not everybody could afford a grape tester. So they came up with a refractometer. They're refracting light through a prism, and it gives you a number. That's what it's. Most of you have probably seen a refractometer when the guy tests your antifreeze in your vehicle. That's all he's doing. He's just testing. He's using it to test an antifreeze solution. But you can get the juice out of a plant, and the only way you can get the juice of that plant to come up is that the mineral content has to come up, the sugars have to come up, the carbohydrates come up, everything comes up with it. If you were to put just a nitrogen fertilizer on, your protein will come up because nitrogen and protein equal. They're just on either side of the equal sign. Nitrogen equals protein. You might even drop your bricks if you put on too much ammonium nitrate fertilizer, which is nothing more than gunpowder, if you're familiar with that. So the thing is that if you have someone's bricks start coming up, what they've done is they've brought up the health of the whole plant, everything, minerals, micronutrients, and sugars. They've all come up. Well, what's interesting is that when you give the plant everything that it needs, okay, and the life in the soil is bringing it to the plant. They're mobile, the plant is not. They're bringing it to the plant. The plant has all of the nutrients available to it, and it's available in the sea minerals. Wheatgrass will actually pick up 90 elements of the 92 elements that's in seawater. Your grasses actually pick up things better than legumes. Alfalfa, I believe, picks up, probably depending on the variety, especially if it's a non-GMO plant, it will pick up, I think, 65, if my memory serves me correctly. There's other plants like a yam, a sugar, a sweet potato. They pick up like 86 nutrients. It's amazing when you start playing with this. Get yourself a refractometer. They cost about $85 from Pike Agri. They're on the East Coast someplace, the Northeast United States. Look it up, Pike Agri on the internet. But what ends up happening is that let's go to high school biology. The cell wall, if you can think about it, gets thicker. The cellulose gets thicker and tougher. Think of a cheap balloon versus an expensive balloon. An expensive balloon, it'll hold the helium for days on end, maybe even weeks on end. A cheap balloon, the next morning, as the temperature in the house dropped, your balloon's falling on the floor. Okay, same thing with the plant cells. The tougher the plant cell gets, the harder it is when that solution freezes for it to break. It also acts like an antifreeze in the plant, and your freeze point drops. Case in point, and this was the second year that I had applied sea minerals, had a local rancher here show up at my place because I was interested in their cattle, and I'm sitting there wanting to talk about their grass-based genetics, and the rancher was looking at me going, "Why isn't your field bent over?" And I had about 18, 20 inches of growth in May, and it was a good year that year. But every night we were 18, 19 degrees, and theirs was so bad that they went out and clipped it off and had the plant start completely over. And they're going, "Why isn't your field laying on the ground like my field is?" And I looked at them and I says, "You aren't going to believe it." And at that point, people just thought I was a nut. And I call it being on the lunatic fringe. And I like being where I'm at now, on the lunatic fringe. Well, we walked through my alfalfa field. Needless to say, after 15 tons later, she had her place with sea minerals on it. And it had so much growth, so much biomass on her one application that it actually broke their swather, which I work for a John Deere dealership, and we were happy to oblige and fix their swather. But the thing is what's interesting about it is that your plant becomes drought resistant, frost resistant. If it's got a thick cell wall, it will also not let the moisture evaporate out. And when we have days here where I live, when our humidity drops to 4%, that's a huge thing. I'm using less water than all of my neighbors around me. My stuff is not falling over and dying because of frost. And, it's a wonderful thing. I have ranchers that'll stop in here and go, "What are you doing?" And I'll oblige them and tell them, and some of them just shake their heads and walk away, and that's fine. I will green up 2 months before everybody else, and I will stay green 2 months longer than everybody else, just because of those two factors. Now, this is the fun part right here. If you were to walk up to your people and say, "Would you like to make your plants resistant to insects?" And of course, everybody would just say, "Yeah, I would love that. No more grasshoppers." And we have infestations here of grasshoppers that they just wipe out fields. And probably one of the biggest surprises was, and this is, I can't remember how many years ago this was, probably 4 years ago, is that everybody had grasshoppers. I was working on a hay crew for a local rancher, and you get out of the swather, and the grasshoppers are swarming around you. And it dawned on me that I didn't have any on my place. And I can't remember where I read it, who told me, but they said, "You know why an insect won't get near your plants?" I says, "No, why?" It says, "Because they're high bricks." And okay, what does that mean? Well, an insect doesn't have a liver. If they eat a high sugar content, and that's what Aaron was talking about with the a lot of these insects, and I don't know what an insect sees or what they smell. I don't know what it is, but they will not go on your place if your plants are high bricks because of the increased sugar that's in those plants. And once the sugar hits their system, turns to alcohol, kills them. I have absolutely no fear whatsoever of insects. They can be all around me, and I look at them, and if I'm walking across my field and I see a grasshopper out there, I just encourage them to leave, or they're going to die and become compost, and will just help my field out a little bit more. But that's one of the fun benefits that you have with raising your bricks, and that's what you're doing. What I'm talking about is not just sea minerals on your place. You're increasing the health of your plant. You're increasing your bricks of your plant, and that's what takes care of it. The other thing is when you use sea minerals and compost tea, and compost tea is, if you want to know about compost tea and how an easy way of making it, contact me. I'll be more than happy to talk to you. But I can talk about compost tea as long as I can talk about sea minerals. But they two do go together. You cannot do one without the other. And there are people out there that promote one without the other, and it's like leaving out half of the equation. The other thing, when you bring the health of your soil up, when you are balancing, and it's exactly what Aaron was talking about. He's got it down. He's 100% true. You're balancing your soil with, and in order to balance it, you have to put a balanced product into it. I don't even listen to soil experts anymore. I don't even bother to read what they're saying. And someone say, "Well, you're being closed-minded," and I would say, "Yes, thank you very much. I don't want something in my mind to confuse me." I don't soil test. I have never soil tested my place. Why? I've got 4 feet of alkali on my back field. I've got marginal ground compared to other places in my front field. If I were to soil test it, they would look at me and they would say, "You need 100,000 tons of whatever, and you're still not going to change it. At a certain point, I gave up on, because I used to put on elemental sulfur, trying to get the pH to go the other direction. I got nothing I tried in the commodity realm through the soil builders, the fertilizer companies, worked. Nothing did. They did finally kill my place, as I explained it at the beginning, and that was the end of that. But the thing is what you're doing is, once you balance your soil, your weed problem goes away. There's two very pervasive weeds. Actually, there's three here. There is something they call white top. It's sort of a 6 to 8 inch weed. I cannot find anything in any of the weed books that Charles Walters wrote telling me what kind of an indicator it is. When I started on about the 3rd year of applying sea minerals, and I'm talking at this point, I had the most I had ever put on my place had been 10, 15 pounds to the acre. And my white top, as I built up the sea minerals in my soil, the white top disappeared. It's gone. Whatever I did made it uninhabitable, and it's gone. I don't fear white top. We have Russian knapweed here. It comes to the fence line and will not cross the fence line. It's the most amazing thing you've ever seen. My neighbor's place is infested with both white top, knapweed, and another one which is pepperweed, and his place floods onto mine. So I know I'm getting seed across my place. I found one pepperweed plant on my place 2 years ago. And the weeds are an indicator. They're like insects. If you have insect problems, that's an indicator. Something's out of balance. Something isn't right. And Maynard Murray, I would encourage you to get Sea Energy Agriculture, read it. It'll blow your mind. Okay, it's great stuff. When you balance your soil, it changes everything. Now, all right, I'll slow down here because it'll burn up a bunch of time. We've covered bricks. We've covered the benefits of this. When you start raising your bricks, you'll get to the point where you'll just wonder how far you can push that plant. Alfalfa, anything around 20, 21 bricks alfalfa is considered in the stratosphere. 3 years ago, you guys might have heard a sound that was coming from the west. That was me hooping and hollering. I hit 21 bricks on my alfalfa. Let me see. It was a year and a half ago. It was two seasons ago, or I'm trying to remember. It wasn't last year. It was the year before. So it had been 2009. I hit somewhere between 24 and 25 bricks. You can get grass. That was on a grass forage mix, mostly grass. I hit 25 bricks. You can burn livers. I burned a liver on a beef that I butchered. You can get this stuff too hot. I think the crowd I'm talking to right now, you guys all probably know what relative feed value is. Around here, the big crop is dairy quality alfalfa. They consider anything around here 180, 190 relative feed value to be dairy quality. And when I was at Acres a year and a half ago, I was talking with a fellow from Iowa, and he was talking, and he tests his stuff. He had 18 bricks his relative feed value was 270. And I turned to him and I said, what would 24, 25 bricks be? He said somewhere around 320. And I said, and I had never even heard of relative feed value until a week before I had gone to the Acres Conference. I don't run in those circles. And he said, you know, that's just, you know, it's incredible. I've mentioned that to some guys here that I know that have done or are doing dairy alfalfa, and their eyes just bugged out. They can't even comprehend it. And in grass finishing beef, you know, we're not talking grass-fed. You guys understand that the whole game that people play in today's world with grass-fed versus grass-finished. They like to tell you that you know, they've got lots of flavor and fat is bad. Well, if you put all grass fat on, your CLA goes through the roof. Your omega-3 goes through the roof, and the health benefits of it are just incredible. I've been chasing an article for the last 4 days, tried to get it for this conference tonight, and I couldn't get anything to print. But the article has come out, and it came out in the LA Times, I believe on the 15th, that 47% of the meat in the grocery store today is infected, contaminated with staph that is antibacterial resistant. If you're trying to figure out how to market your meat and you can grass finish it, you just got handed the gold, you know, the goose that laid the golden egg. You know, it's the benefits of putting on sea minerals on your ground. I love to talk about them because they're incredible. I'll close with this. And when I was standing outside, and I had to learn how to put on sea minerals in a foliar fashion. I had never sprayed anything in my life out of a tank, and the learning curve on it was fairly good. Figured it out. Well, I was out filling my tank one day, and I was getting ready to go spray my field, and I was standing there, and I was just trying to figure it out. And this was one of the first times I had ever used the application of Redmond, and I was sitting there, and I was going, I think I'm doing the math wrong, because I was coming up with 1.6 cents an acre. And I was standing there, and I started laughing because I was going, I could own 1,000 acres, and it cost me $16. It would cost me more in diesel now to spray it on than the product. The thing that I don't work for Redmond. I've talked with Aaron. I've interviewed the people at Redmond extensively. I am a proponent of Redmond. It's the only one that I use. I haven't got to talk about the conditioner, about using the conditioner on your ground. Redmond is the only clean source of sea minerals that I know of. I had a fellow, and I was trying to use liquid ocean water at the beginning. I spent a lot of money on ocean water, and very expensive ocean water. And I had a fellow look at me and say, well, let's just go to the ocean, pump a bunch of it out of the Oregon coast, and take it home and spread it on our ground. And I'm going, wait a minute. The Oregon Ocean has dead zones in it where nothing grows. I'm going, I don't want to bring that home and dump it on my ground. Whatever is killing everything in the ocean off the Oregon coast, be on my place. And I have a fellow that I work with in Missouri, and he goes and he called up after the tragic events of Japan and said, David, do you realize that radiation now is dumping into the Pacific Ocean? The Pacific Ocean is the most polluted body of water on the planet. You know, we don't even have to talk about the amount of plastics that's in it. Now we've got radiation. And I'm sitting back and I'm looking at it and I'm going, I would not want to harvest my sea minerals out of the ocean just because of the amount of pollution. And you know, I look at people and say, go buy yourself a bag of Redmond animal salt, get yourself a centrifugal spreader, and throw it on your ground. And it is a clean source of sea minerals. And it's completely undervalued. But don't tell Aaron that, because they'll want to raise the price. So, all right, I'll quit. It looks like I've gone for 40, 45 minutes. I can go longer, but the thing is that it is an incredible thing. I haven't even talked about how much back fat I put on animals that I butcher on my place. You know, what kind of health that they have. That my mineral box, I don't even have a mineral box program anymore, except for to put a cup of Redmond mineral and a cup of kelp in what used to be a very big smorgasbord, because my animals don't eat it because they're getting everything through the grass. So, all right, Scott, I'll quit.
All right, thank you very much, David. We sure appreciate you being here, and of course, we're going to give you an opportunity here for questions. That concludes the formal presentation part of our webinar tonight, and there will be a recorded copy of the webinar, including the question and answer period that we're going to be having in just a moment, all available for listening to at agribestfeeds.com. Again, that's www.agribestfeeds.com. There you can take a listen to not only tonight's webinar and the question and answer period, but also any previous webinars that we've had as well. Well, we have with us some other panelists, and I want to give them an opportunity to maybe add a few comments as well. Irv Heidel, who's president of Agri-Best Feeds, is joining us. And Irv, at this time, if you want to add a few comments, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Justin. First of all, I just want to say that Agri-Best Feeds is just pleased to sponsor these webinars, and a special thanks this evening to Aaron and to Dave here with their very informative and very interesting topic and new information, very exciting. One of the things that just from Agri-Best Feeds, I would like to just say that we're, as a company, very committed to marketing products that make a major positive impact on health and performance of livestock, and of course, in the case, real salt with human as well. And so I guess it's very clear to those that have listened to this program this evening that certainly Redmond natural minerals really is a key factor in that kind of an impact on the livestock industry, and as well as the other program that we market that has big impacts on performance of livestock is Sweet Pro, that has some very unique energy and protein sources that feature digestive aid called probiotin, which is a natural product of yeast and enzymes and prebiotic oligosaccharides that have now proven themselves to improve feed efficiency in that area of 25%. That's major. And so when you see the compounding of these products that we're talking about here in their value to livestock, this is very central to what Agri-Best is all about. And so, again, thank you this evening to Aaron and to Dave, and I'm looking forward to some questions and answers that are out ahead here, and certainly down the road we may have certainly a source in visiting with Dave about maybe harvesting some of his additional knowledge in areas that he wasn't able to cover here this evening. So again, thank you very much, and with that I'll turn it back to you, Justin.
All right, thank you, Irv. Also joining us as a panelist tonight is Brad Thornburg, who is with Sweet Pro. And Brad, if you want to add a few comments as well, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, just a couple of quick comments here. And just was thinking about, in dealing with the cattle, the rumen health. With the Sweet Pro, you have the prebiotics, you have the viable enzymes, you have the probiotin. You are building up those microbials in that rumen so that you are raising pH in the animal, and you are able to bring the digestion up about 25% or better in that animal as far as feed efficiency. So now you are having a balanced blend that's improving the digestion and able to handle the minerals that Dave and Aaron were talking about even better. Basically, when you're also looking at probiotin, which is a blend of barley malt and flax and oats and wheat, along with the distiller's grains and the yeast, you have several different sources of protein. And each one of those sources has a different strength in a different amino acid. So all of their lysines and methionines and cysteines, etc., are there in a very broad array, and they work better in conjunction together like that than if we're just feeding lysine or if we're just feeding methionine. So you get a very broad array of the amino acids. So you're keeping the whole digestive tract operating as efficiently as possible with a balanced blend coming into that animal. So I just thought I'd just kind of throw that in there quickly. Again, in talking about grass finishing, again, with the Sweet Pro, we have grass finishing blocks that allow that animal to grass finish with basically the same type of taste that you're getting out of a grain, in the feedlots, but you're getting it from distiller's grains out there on the pasture, and it raises some new opportunities for that. So, okay, I'll turn that back to Irv, or actually to Justin. Irv doesn't want anything.
All right, thanks, Brad. And of course, as we said, we do have several panelists joining us here tonight, Brad, Irv, and of course Aaron, who started our presentation tonight, and David, who presented through most of tonight's presentation, our panelists joining us. So if you have questions, we're going to open it up for questions at this time to give everyone an opportunity to visit and get some answers to your questions in regards to tonight's topic. Definitely kind of a, it's as David was talking about, some of this stuff is new out in the countryside. It's things that you're hearing about, but maybe you don't see a lot of people trying. And yet we've even in our tonight's presentation, as well as the one we had last summer, both dealing with producers in the land, working the land, that are using it and finding how it works, and actually have great testimony in regards to it. So make sure you come up with some questions here for our presenters tonight, because definitely a lot of things that we can talk about. While we wait for you to kind of work on some of your questions and think about those, again, if you do have a question, you can, next to your name, you can click that little box. We'll know you have a question, or else you can type it out as well. Either way, we'll know that you have a question. We can call on you. I want to also remind you that if you haven't yet, make sure you sign up for the Agri-Best Feeds newsletter. Also, you can go in there, the way that you can go and sign up for that newsletter, of course, is go to their website at www.agribestfeeds.com. You can go in there, and there's a tab there that you can click on Register for Monthly Producer Information Webinars. And if you click on that, there's an option that you can not only see upcoming webinars, but previous webinars that we've had, listen to those, and also in the left-hand side there, a place where you can put in your email address and sign up for their monthly newsletters that come out. Again, would encourage you to do that and stay informed, stay up to date with what's going on with Agri-Best Feeds and the products that they are pushing out here for producers, for folks in different areas with the Sweet Pro products as well as the Redmond Natural Mineral products as well. Again, we want to give you plenty of opportunity here tonight for any questions that you might have, and don't want to rush away too quick here, because we definitely have some great folks joining us here tonight. We want to thank Redmond Mineral for Aaron with Redmond Mineral for providing and helping out with tonight's presentation. Again, I want to give everybody the opportunity here for questions. If you have a question, again, all you have to do is just raise your hand and we know that you have one. With tonight's presentation, of course, sponsored by Agri-Best Feeds, we want to, they've continued to be, this has been a very proactive method for them to not only educate their dealers, but also various customers throughout the country, and so they continue to do that, and throughout these different webinars that we've had, we've been joined by folks from Sweet Pro, Brad Thornburg always joining us. We appreciate that, and of course folks with Redmond Mineral Products as well. Personally, on a note, while we're thinking of questions here, personally on a note for myself, of course I'm with the Nile out of Billings, Montana, and recently we just kind of finished up a major situation in which about 800 head of horses were kind of left out in the countryside, and I want to thank Redmond Rock for donating a product that we put out into the pasture for those horses, and tried to get working on some pictures and get that pulled together, but it was kind of a big pasture, and I wasn't out there when they first set it out, but it was something we were able to get in the pasture right away for those horses, and it was something that we sure appreciate on behalf of the Nile, and I know everybody that was a part of the Leachman horse efforts and Operation Home Place. We sure appreciate all of those, the donation by Redmond for that, of course, also for Agri-Best Feeds for kind of getting that lined up as well. Well, don't want to draw everything off the attention of what our topic is tonight. If you have questions, please just go ahead and raise your hand. We'll know you have a question there, and we'll definitely would call on you for, or if you don't want to talk over the air here, you're more than welcome to type it out as well, but we do want to give you ample opportunity. Again, don't forget to sign up for the newsletters that are out there. Go onto their website. If you have any questions about the product that we've talked about here tonight with Redmond, or even the Sweet Pro products that we've talked about, make sure you contact your local dealer and visit with them about that. Or you can call Agri-Best Feeds directly. Their toll-free number is 866-601-6646. It's at the top right-hand side of your screen. You can see it there, and you can visit with them directly as well. But again, we don't want to rush away too quick here and give everybody opportunity. Everybody's kind of quiet here tonight. Not too many questions out there, but we don't want to rush away too quick here. So again, any questions out there? Don't forget that we do have some coming. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Justin, this is Irv.
Go ahead.
Yeah, this is Irv here. I have a question for Dave there. I'm trying to get a little bit of a feel on his recommendations, or at least as he used the Redmond minerals on soils and describing his heavy soils. And you indicated that initially you used very small amounts. Do you have any kind of elaborating a little bit more on that? On heavy soils, what do you see as kind of what I call, shall I say, not our safe but appropriate levels for application on initial application, and at what rate, or and what would be the markers that would determine, you know, in year 2 or 3 that you increase to another application? I know soil health or life is a key factor there, but could you just elaborate a little bit more on application rate recommendations for heavy soils, and then that for starting, and then also application on what is called more like sandy loam type soils?
I've come to the conclusion, that especially on an initial application, that, and I've talked with people from Vermont, New Hampshire to Hawaii about this, and you're safe with, especially if your soil is heavy, an initial application of 20 pounds to the acre. I know that that's a lot lighter than what a lot of people think, but think micro, very small amounts. You get into your lighter soils, a sandy loam where you can take a bucket of water out, pour it on the ground, and in 2-3 minutes, it's pretty much gone. That's pretty light soil. And at that point, you also want to put on, you could put on more. You could probably put on 40 pounds to the acre. But the thing that I caution people about is that on a real light soil, once it washes past the root zone, it's gone. You're not going to get it back. And, you might, on a real light soil, you might be applying 20, 30, 40 pounds to the acre a couple times, depending on how much water you're getting. If you're under a pivot with light soils, you're going to apply it in the spring, and then you're gonna watch your bricks. You're gonna watch your plants. A lot of times you can't tell by the plant by just looking at it from one pivot to the next, or one wheel line to the next, or however you irrigate. But what you'll end up finding is that you start testing the bricks on them, and there'll be a world of difference. And so I'm a proponent, and I know that I get people that object to that because of the price of diesel today. But the thing is you get the greatest benefit by applying lighter amounts. If you've got a soil like Maynard Murray talked about in his book, they were applying 1,500 to 2,000 pounds in Illinois. Well, that soil's so deep there, and he got his best results with that. Wow. I don't know about anybody else, but I like to hang on to my money a little bit tighter than that. That's a lot on your soil. I mean, and how much of that is washing past the root zone? I think that they could have probably done some experimenting. And his book does not talk about soils at all. He just talks about his experiments. He doesn't get into the soils. The fellow who taught me took over Maynard Murray's hydroponic system, and he spent hours with me, and he drilled it into my head. You've got to know your soil. If you don't know your soil, you'll overwhelm the plant. And when you're initially taught something, boy, it sticks. And so if you've got a heavy soil, you're going to apply it one time, and then you're going to watch your plants. If you've got lighter soil, you're going to still apply it in lighter amounts. Maybe you can go a little bit more depending on, and you really have to know your place. You have to know your soils, and you have to focus in on that. Keeping it in the root zone is where, and if your root zone is depending on your plant, if you're talking a grain crop, your root zone is 8 inches. You have a more permanent crop. You're dealing with a forage. You could have 3 and 4 feet of root zone. And so does that answer your question? Does that get what you're wanting to?
Yeah, I think in the broad terms that's correct. I mean, that does answer it. One of the questions I might have in addition to that is in talking about, so for example, center pivot irrigation, are you saying that probably one or more application in a season might be appropriate?
Yes, light applications, and a pivot in this country, your pivot's going to put on somewhere between 30 and 40 inches of water through a summer, And as you're watering that and you're watching your plants, you'll notice, you'll immediately see them perk up because the bricks comes up. And then, you know, if you're watching them and the bricks fall off, because it'll fall off, until you get it built up in your soil a little bit. And I'll also tell you, you've got to be careful. You really have to be watching your plants, because at a certain point you can build this stuff up in your soil. I didn't apply sea minerals last fall. The way our water comes in, I put them on in the fall of the year, so it washes into the root zone, builds the strength of the plant, and then when your plant is ready to come up and really put on some growth in the spring, I felt like when I hit 25 bricks that I had plenty in my soil, and let's harvest it off a little bit. So, and I'll make another point. You know, these, like on your Sweet Pro, your Redmond mineral, what the animal's body doesn't utilize goes out the back end. And people might not, you know, if they've been using Sweet Pro and Redmond for any length of time on their place, they're putting sea minerals and microbial activity into their ground. They're already doing this. You know, that's just a longer process, and you can sort of jumpstart it by putting it directly on and up through the plant. But you know, when someone is doing, you know, what Scott was telling me, what your guys' philosophy was, if they've been doing that for any length of time, they're improving their soil, especially if they're capturing that manure and putting it on either with a spreader or through compost tea, harrowing their fields in the spring of the year to break that stuff up. They're getting that into the plant. It's a slower way of doing it, but you know, not all those minerals stick. A bunch of them go through, and you know, it's watching that plant. It's looking. Well, you guys are all farmers and ranchers. You know what a healthy plant looks like. You're looking for insects, or you have insects that are eating the plant. Well, if you've got insects eating your plants, you don't have enough bricks in them. So, does that help?
Yes, it does. Yeah, and you're right on with the what passes through the animal, and we've definitely had observations of that as it even the manure that is out even on ranges that are not fertilized, how that manure breaks down, and you know, dung beetle activity, the microbial activity in the range grass is improved, and that is a process. It is an improvement of soil, and that's why I find so intriguing your scenario of the treatment of the forage and the impact that it has on the bricks value, and then the impact that has on livestock, and of course that then again has impact on the soil again. So very fascinating information in that regard. So I believe you've really helped me in terms of understanding the application rates, trying to get some feel for, because you get asked these recommendations very frequently as to, well, what should we put on? One question I was wanting to ask also, in your experience, did you measure any of your bricks values on your forages before you started applying the Redmond minerals? So what your baseline kind of was then?
Yeah, it was 4.
Oh, really? Okay. Okay.
Some of the people, they'll call up and I'll ask them what their bricks are. Some of them know, some of them don't. But all of them are bumping somewhere between 1 and sometimes as low as 0, but usually somewhere between 1 to 4, 1 to 5, is pretty standard. I had a fellow call up a week or two ago, and he was ecstatic. He couldn't contain himself. In 2 years of doing this, he's got 16 bricks. And you look at people and you go, do you realize that you can put butterfat in milk and back fat on beef? And they say that anything above 12, you can put back fat on an animal very easily. I don't butcher a beef unless an inch to me is absolute minimum for back fat, and that's on a 20-month-old animal. And I'm much happier with 1.5 inches. And the meat tastes better, and not only that, I've got a lot more tallow, that grass fat tallow that I can use for all kinds of products.
Okay, very good.
All right. Any other questions out there we want to give? Okay, you've got Deanne. I'm going to go with you. You had a question there. Did we? Well, I see your hand went away there. Did we get your question answered there? I don't know. You had your hand up for a minute. Just going to give anybody an opportunity here. Dean, again, did you have a question there? There you go. I see you there. I'm going to unmute your microphone, Dean, and if you want to go ahead and ask your question, go ahead.
Okay, Dave mentioned foliar feeding on forage. I was wondering if he knew of anybody that was using foliar feeding on corn.
I'm trying to think here. Corn presents its own set of problems. I would think that corn could very easily be foliar fed at when it's at that stage where you can run a sprayer over the top of it, and the way that plant grows, it'll get it down to the root very efficiently. Foliar feeding, there's a lot of guys that push foliar feeding, and I have some issues with the foliar feeding. I tell people, if you're going to spray sea minerals on, and you've got a concentration of 4,000 parts per million, you're going to want to be doing it right before rain, or you're going to put your pivot across it. You're going to want to do it in the evening when the dew can take it off the plant, just because one of the it's balanced, but let me tell you, it's still sodium chloride, and sodium chloride will burn a plant. The thing that with corn, that and this information came out, it was last summer. Someone had been doing some research, and I had always wondered about this, is that GMO corn, some form of genetically engineered, genetically modified, you can put all 92 elements in front of that plant, and there's something going on in the genetically modified, genetically engineered plants. They will not take up those micronutrients. My thought was, okay, if they're genetically engineered, they're genetically modified, what happens if we were to put all of the nutrients there in front of it? Could we make that a healthy plant? And the answer came back, and I can't remember the university that did the study. The answer came back no, that the plant will not take up the nutrients, and that was a little bit disheartening to me. It also told me that that I had to be careful of what plants I was planting on my place.
Right.
So, you know, but foliar just, this isn't like a spray like a chemical that you can go out and just spray and boom, it's a magic bullet. By far the best way to get all of the benefits from this is to get it into the plant through the root. Another book out there besides Sea Energy Agriculture by Maynard Murray is a book called Fertility from the Ocean Deep by Charles Walters. Another really, really good book that talks about sea minerals. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
All right, thanks, Dean, so much from Pleasanton, Nebraska this morning, or this evening, joining us. Thanks for being here. Any other questions out there? I want to give everybody opportunity here when we have somebody that has extensive use in regards to the subject that we have at hand here tonight. We definitely want to give opportunity for any other questions that are out there. I want to remind you, as you're thinking of that, we do have some upcoming webinars that will be taking place. And let me get my computer kind of clicking along here. But coming up on Thursday, we will be having a cattle focus webinar on fly control, Alticid IGR with Manuel Vela. That will be coming up on Thursday, this coming Thursday, that is. And of course, then coming up on April 26th, it's on with a human health focus webinar, and it is another Salt Your Way to Health. This time it'll be with Daryl Bouchard. And so put those on your calendars coming up. Keep in mind that all of those start at 7 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. So there you go. Keep that, put those on your calendar. They will definitely be some good webinars as well. Again, we want to give you plenty of opportunity here tonight. I want to thank everybody for joining us as well, also our panelists with that. We won't rush away too quick here until we give you every opportunity for any questions that you might have. Again, if you have any questions regarding product here, make sure you contact your dealer or give Agri-Best Feeds a call directly at their toll-free number. It is 866-601-6646, and that is their toll-free number there. And give them a call at the world headquarters located in Billings, Montana. Well, if kind of looks like we're kind of winding things down just a little bit. Before we go, though, I want to go back through some of our panelists and give them any final comments. And with that, Herb, I'll start with you. Any final comments here tonight?
Other than to say a big thank you for the time and presentation and the attendance here this evening, and for those that will listen to this in the future. Very informative, and I just want to, again, say thanks to Aaron and to Dave and to each of the attendees here tonight.
All right. Thanks, Herb. Brad Thornburg, of course, joining us with Sweet Pro. Any final comments from you?
No, just basically, again, just you're with the Sweet Pro product, you're putting that rumen and digestive tract in a condition to be able to make full use of these minerals and all of the little tools and all of the little groceries out of the forages to get that into that animal. And you know, there's nothing more fun than walking through a pasture discussing dung and dung beetles with Irv. It's just kind of an enjoyable walk in the park there.
Once in a lifetime opportunity, huh? All right. David, of course, was our main presenter here tonight. Some final comments before we leave?
No, I know that this is a huge paradigm shift for people, and it's definitely worth it. I mean, there's real benefits to it.
All right, and we do thank you for joining us. And finally, Aaron, we appreciate you being here as well. Some final comments.
Well, just thank you guys. Thanks, Agri-Best, for having us on and doing this. And David, a special thanks to you. Appreciate working with you, knowing you, and hearing your story and your willingness to share it with us. And as we continue to learn more through David and through other places that we try this, and that people all over the country doing this in the soil. We'll be sure to pass whatever information we can along to you guys so you can use it throughout your distribution efforts. But thanks again for having us, and we appreciate all the Redmond business.
All right, we do appreciate you being here as well tonight. We thank everybody for being here. On behalf of Agri-Best Feeds, your sponsor of tonight's webinar, we are thankful that you are with us. Don't forget our upcoming webinars that we will have coming up on Thursday night, and also a Salt Your Way to Health one coming up on Tuesday of next week. But for tonight's presenters, and on behalf of myself, Justin Mills, your host for tonight's webinar, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you on the next one. Again, for more information, go to www.agribestfeeds.com. Good night.